you're all stuck with me for the next 30, 40 minutes, so you don't have a choice. We got it right here. So I'm Nicole Turner, Senior Vice President of Technology Hubs at MasterCard. Welcome, Nicole. We've got Kirti Gupta, Chief Economist, Vice President, Economic Strategy at Qualcomm.
Thank you.
And then we got Frank Libero, Chief Information Officer, Restaurant Brands International, which will be via Zoom-ish. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Hi.
How y'all doing?
All is well.
We're going to try to make this work with one of the members virtual.
Okay.
There we go. We see. Hey, Frank. How you doing?
Good. Hi, everybody. Good morning.
You guys, you can say good morning back. He can hear you. They're laughing, Frank. They're laughing. Can you hear them?
I can now. Yes, perfect. Thank
Good.
you.
We got a good morning too for you.
Good morning.
Just to be clear, I didn't get no good morning, but you three did. So I think this conversation for everyone in the room, we've got three different leaders with three different perspectives and industries, which is for me very exciting because I think it'll shine a light on many of these different things that we're talking about, especially when we're talking about legacy mindsets to that degree. So let's get started. I'm going to start, Nicole, I'm going to start with you, if that's okay.
Fine.
When you think about the what's holding us back, the current landscape, you're already smiling before I even ask you a question. The current landscape, can you break it down for the audience of what that looks like and what you think that is holding us back?
Sure. I think one of the things that's holding us back when we think about the legacy mindset is thinking that we can do what we've done in the past in the future. Because if you think about it, if you think about your brand, you think about your culture and the direction of where you want to go, you can no longer do that now. The world is changing, it's evolving. And now you're going to get on the train or you're going to get left behind. Got to tag in New York City with that.
I like that. I like that. Kirti, what do you think? Do you think that the future landscape it's going to evolve, but what are you seeing that's different?
What I'm seeing is the labor market story. Labor shortage.
Okay, hold on. I got to stop you
is
here.
to
Those
stay.
who know, she's
Yeah.
about to throw a whole bunch of, can I say it? Stats and data, which you should be paying attention and writing down right now. Okay, I'll set you up now. Go ahead.
All right. Well, I'll keep
Pressure.
that for future then.
No,
So,
no,
I
I
mean, labor
think it's
shortage is
important.
here to
It's
stay,
important.
right? It's going to be a pervasive trend. And what we are seeing, like 70% of the CEOs in their surveys are saying they want to invest in digitization and automation of their processes. And I think that's going to be an important trend going forward.
So what does that mean? When you're saying that, what does that mean toward the moving landscape going forward when it comes to people and hiring practices?
So I think that a lot of, until now, the concern has been hiring practices, getting people jobs. But right now, there is a shortage of labor, not of jobs,
yeah.
right? I mean, we understand that we are entering a slowdown in the economy globally and so on. But you got to recognize that the number of people in the workforce that are participating have significantly shrunk, and this isn't a passing trend. It is a trend that is here to stay. So let me actually not disappoint Ryan with sharing some stats. So
I put so much pressure. I'm sorry, but I heard some of it in the past, so had to ask you.
So in the United States, for example, right, before the pandemic, there used to be 4.2 people working for every non-working person in the US economy. Right now, that ratio is 3 to 1. And in the coming decade, that ratio is going to drop to 2 to 1. So for every non-working person, there aren't that many working people going to be, there in the economy. And that's, we can talk about the demographics. That's a trend for a lot of reasons. But it's something that we all need to be concerned about because it means that overall productivity is on the decline and GDP is going to reduce unless we have some technological shocks that improve productivity per unit of labor. That's just how economic growth works. And that means automation, digitization, technology, all of that we're here to discuss today.
And so Frank's probably knowing that now I'm going to come to him because we're talking about technology to that degree of how it's modern, to your point, it's going to get used differently
Yes.
when it comes to resources. Frank, can you share maybe an example or two that you're seeing that's kind of getting organizations future ready when it comes to implementing this, or maybe identify some core technologies maybe that you're familiar with?
Yeah, for us, I think the answer to the first question is we don't have a choice but to innovate. In our business, it's highly competitive with new entrants coming all the time, right? So if we're not innovating and showing our customers that we can give them the experience they want in our locations, in our restaurants, then we will fail just because we don't have that compelling experience they're looking for. In terms of, what are some of those innovations coming? It is about automation for us, right? And it's both for front of house and back of house. If you think about it, our consumers and our guests are becoming more and more comfortable with automation. You're seeing testing in our locations and others where we're using voice in the drive-through with AI technology to be able to have a conversation with our customers about what they want and what they want on the products that they're ordering. So you're seeing automation, customer facing, and then our crew as well. And I don't think we have the same labor issues what were mentioned in terms of staffing our restaurants, but our crew many of them are they've grown up as digital natives, right? Their expectation is that technology can help them more than it does today. So we're looking at automation both in front of house with the customer as well as back of house with our crew.
I mean, I don't know, but I mean that everything you said stood out to me. But there was something about the drive-through that you're testing the AI. How I'm just curious how that has been receptive both externally and internally.
Yeah, no, the crew when it works, the crew love it, right? So I think we're still in early days.
When it works, yeah.
It does help the crew out a bunch in terms of then taking orders. And we always say that the drive-through order taker is probably the hardest job in the restaurant, right? Because if you think about the demand on that person, it is really tough. So to the extent that technology can help them, and I think we're really good about technology can digitize voice, no problem. It's then that AI capability, the chatbot capability, in order to have kind of a conversation with the customer, where we're still kind of learning how to do that best.
When we say technology, I know we jumped right into it, talked about AI, and excited about change. But there's some of us, the pace of change is a little bit too fast for some organizations. And Nicole, when you think about tech or tech hubs or just in general, how does that complexity, how do you keep it simple or enough to where those in the room going, hey, where do I start? Yes, it's great, everyone's talking about the AI piece, but we're not there yet. Right. How do we evaluate that?
I think having that test and learn mindset, and also having patience and understanding what your consumers need. And I'll talk in purposes of the employees. So we're saying we have the AI, and how do we leverage it for our consumers? But at the same time, how do you think about your internal customers, your most valuable asset, which is your employees? Understanding the mindset and the shift in this day and age for the employees, because you have some that was digital native. You have a complexity of different generations who are now in the workforce, and we're faced with this new, I call it industrial or workplace revolution that has hit us. And so understanding, first having that baseline framework to say, okay, if I'm looking for individuals, for us to be more flexible, because we need to produce, we need to evaluate, we need to produce faster, we need to think creatively, we need to innovate even more so in this new space. But first, understanding your landscape. Earlier, we had a conversation about how do we leverage the consumer experience into the employee experience. Yeah. I think doing that. We have a targeted group at MasterCard, which we have the employee digital experience. And what they do is they focus on just that. What does it mean for when I walk into the building or if I'm at home to ensure that I have the same workplace experience, whether you're in person or you're virtual? At the same time, how do we do that from a career perspective? We have this new AI platform called Unlocked. If I want to make sure I create an engaged, purpose-driven workforce, then how do I understand your needs or what it is that you are requiring, whether you're at home or not? And so I do think, how do you evolve and think through that?
But that hasn't been easy, though.
Not at all. It hasn't. It's a shift.
It's a shift, and I think it takes time.
Yes.
Right, to get all the different stakeholders involved in that, right? And I mean, Kathy, what do you think when the economy, when you look at talented of the labor force, thinking about what you see in the future, what do you see the readiness of that, right? Because I think you got the legacy mindset, which is hard to change when things are working, when things when the economy doesn't go as where it's supposed to, companies tend to do what? Kind of take the gas off the pedal a little bit, or electricity off the pedal, one or the other now.
Yeah.
So,
That's a fair point, Ryan, but the truth is this, that right now, I come from Qualcomm, and Qualcomm is the wireless company. We work on making your cell phones, put the smart in your smartphones. You know us for 3G, 4G, 5G, but also the largest provider of Wi-Fi solutions in enterprises, the chipsets, and Bluetooth, and so on, right? So we are working on connecting everything everywhere right now, connecting industries, changing the multiplier of various kinds of industry verticals. So, people are coming to us from manufacturing, from factory floors and auto industry and saying we want to go from wired to wireless. Enterprises, smart factories, smart home, smart parking, smart cities, and so on. And that kind of transition, at least that is driven from the corporation level, that actually accelerated post-pandemic. It hasn't slowed down. Of course, with the downturn coming, people are concerned. But you got to understand that concern seems to be limited to certain sectors right now. We can talk a little bit more about that. But when the trend of automation is accelerated, it's really hard for companies to reverse that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm seeing. And it's, frankly, from a bigger public policy or a corporate policy perspective, that's a good investment because of this labor force story that we just discussed. We are going to live in a world with labor shortage for an extended period of time.
and Frank, hearing that, especially on the labor side with what you all face, explaining, I'm sure it hasn't been easy when you moved a restaurant company to be more technology based, not to say that, like you said, you have no choice, but that probably comes with some challenges at the same time. What have you think you've seen to kind of, what either has held back or what's been successful for everyone in the room that's helped you all have this discussion a little bit better when it comes to, an organization that's been doing something, and the industry's been doing something in a certain way?
Yeah, no, I think, and I think the point was made earlier. You have to make it easier for both your guests and your crew and your employees, right? If you do that, because in effect, we're not only competing for customers, we're competing for employees, right? Especially in tech. MasterCard and I are in very different businesses, but we're probably still competing for tech people, right?
Is that why we kept you separated in both rooms, to make sure you guys were on the same stage at the same time?
Yeah, no, it's fine. but yeah, to some extent, we're all competing for the same, and especially in the tech space, we're competing for employees. So to the extent that we can make that employee experience as best as possible for them, and boy, it's really confusing now to figure out what that means, right? Because it means something different to so many people, right? You got folks who want to stay home 5 days a week, and folks who want to come in the office 5 days a week, and somehow you got to bridge that gap and give them the technology, the tools, and the flexibility to kind of do both models when it's possible. So yeah, I think the world has changed now, where we've always been in competitive industries, but now we're also in a competition to get the best people working for us, be it in corporate, in Restaurant Brands International corporate, and same in our restaurants, right? In our restaurants, holy smokes, think about how many QSRs you just drive down the street, and we're all competing for that same labor. Yeah. We have to do the same thing in our restaurants to make it compelling for them to want to work in a Burger King, a Popeyes, a Tim Hortons, or in a Firehouse Subs.
I mean, if I was in the audience right now, all I hear is that not to try to be obsolete, right? I mean, it seems like that's the message you were giving. So now, since you're giving that message, I'm going to put each of you on the spot. What are two things that you would give to the execs in this room to either ask questions around not being obsolete, going back to the executive? Oh, you're smiling, Nicole. Two things that you would think that say, hey, these are the questions or things that they need to do not to be obsolete. Does that make sense? So something around what they should be taking away to ensure that they are doing this for the future to be ready. Nicole, I'm going to come to you first because you were smiling, unfortunately.
Sure. I think have a test and learn mindset. Understand there's several iterations. Know that, yes, we are constantly in a churn of change. And if you don't understand that, then develop that business case. that use case for your executive who may have that legacy mindset.
And that business case that you were mentioning,
It's
can you
important.
just drive? Yeah, I feel like you've done this, so that's why.
That's why I'm laughing, right? Because think about it. We open up technology hubs in a pandemic. So could you imagine trying to create the use case as to why we want to drive a hybrid work culture, but at the same time turn to be flexible, being solutions oriented in this space. And so literally developing that business case, trying to understand that if we don't do it, what will happen to our organization? What will happen when we think about the products that we're building and that we're trying to create for the future? Because we're building this for a sustainable future. We're powering economies across the world. What MasterCard is doing. If we don't have that mindset and understand that it's a test and learn environment, it's the innovation culture, we'll be lost.
So in that business case, real quickly, because it's intriguing, is there something that you learned while you were doing it that go, hey, this is what we have to do moving forward? That you're smiling again, I love it. That there was something that, hey, this is going to be in all my presentations around that.
For me, we have more of that sort of show and prove sort of data-driven culture. And so when you support your use case or your business case with some data, that you say, okay, this is what's happening in the labor market. This was happening from a product and a productivity perspective. This is also what's happening in our employee experience. You have to ensure that now in your business cases, you didn't really think about from the employee experience side and what's the
Gotcha.
output. I think incorporating that has been something that I had to do in my role.
Key theme, if you've not heard it, now I've heard it many, many times on this, is the consumer experience getting tied and somehow tying it back into a relevant way. Not just, hey, this is what a consumer feels like, but backing it up. Is that fair? I think each of you
Yes.
said that. How do you take that and make it tangible to
To the employee experience.
the
as well.
employee experience and employee experience, both?
Yep.
So Ryan, I mean, I come from the industry where we are seeing this digital transformation happening across various industry verticals, whether it's enterprises or the hospitality market or healthcare or education or manufacturing, and so on. And I feel that this trend is it is pervasive. It is happening now for the reasons that we have discussed. CEOs and businesses are embracing digitization and automation of their processes and preparing for it. From our perspective, what we are trying to understand is where are those trends the most necessary and the most accelerated? What are the use cases that are critical right now for businesses and for users and for consumers to get automation? Healthcare is a very good example, right? It can solve not only the problems of people like us in the room, but in the developing world, it has real dividends where people don't have access to telehealth or a doctor in their in their nearby vicinity at all. So those are areas that are kind of transforming societies. Connected transportation, that is something that's going to change safety equation, efficiency equation, sustainability for everybody on the planet. These are some of the trends that I think we need to be focusing on when it comes to workers and enterprises. We are trying to provide a wireless solution that works for variety of needs. Whether you are a very high data rate user and using your XR glasses and using the metaverse, we just signed a deal with Meta.
I told you I'll tie it some back to one of the sessions, back to the meta.
Or if you are working in an environment where you need your enterprise to be a private network, which is much more protected from cybersecurity attacks. Or you are working in an environment let's say, a smart manufacturing factory where you really care not about sending gobs of data like using, XR glasses and Meta, but you really care about very low delay and very high reliability, very, very high precision. We want to create a technology that enables all of those different use cases and solutions. And I see that happening. I see industries embracing them across the board.
I don't have the stat, but I know the healthcare industry, when they get sold to organizations going, especially on teledoc, being able, hey, we can get your employee, typically gets sick, takes 4 weeks, we can get your employee, if they see us quicker, to 2 weeks, and that leads to a cost savings of X, Y, and Z. I'm starting to see people use those case examples now moving forward of saying, hey, you'll get more productivity off of an employee should you use these types of services or just to that general. So I don't know if you all have seen that, but I think we're going to see that in other industries as well. Frank, I don't know if you want to jump into this, but I had another question, but if you want to chime in on this topic, but I wanted to ask you something around cyber quickly, but if you tell me what you want to do.
Yeah, really two things on, not growing obsolete. I think the two are, I've been doing this a long time, as you can tell by my gray hair. I've been doing tech. I was born and raised in tech, 30 years now, and there hasn't been 1 year where there is not more demand than supply. So for me, it has to be a hyper focus on prioritization. Like, what are the things that will drive the business in technology, using technology, has to be the focus. And because at this point, almost everyone in the organization has an opinion on how tech can help them do their jobs. Tech is pervasive across every industry and can help everyone, but we have to decide collectively, technology with our business leaders, where to apply this innate or this capability. So hyper-focused prioritization is critical. And then you asked, what message would you give the executives in the audience? Unfortunately, your tech budgets aren't going to go down. So because of the demand, there's just too much demand.
Frank, they're not laughing. I'm just letting you know because I can see them. They're not laughing.
Okay, sorry. But the reality is, the tech budgets probably aren't going to go down between the demand and then the labor shortage, which is driving up our ability to get talent. In both cases, it makes it very hard for us to do to even stay flat with an existing organization.
Well, I guess they're not going to laugh after I say this, but on the boards that I sit on, when it comes to cyber, the budgets are not coming down either. And so since you are the CIO, Frank, for your company, well, just real quickly, cybersecurity obviously is not coming down. It's only going to go up. When I think about legacy mindsets, this seems like we are more trailing behind internally when it talks to cybersecurity employees. I don't want to say simple things, but the hacks come from all the different kind of data points from employees, from consumers. It could be third-party vendors. I know we could talk about this all day, but can you kind of talk about how that shift is seeing from your role of how to explain cyber in an educational aspect to get leaders away from the, we don't need it, we'll deal with it when the problem occurs?
Yeah, no, what I'm seeing, we are required or asked to give the board an update 2 or 3 times a year on cyber now. And they are not, this is something that's critical to them. Like they consider it one of their top priorities. I think it's true across the US and across the world. I think everyone understands that cyber attacks really hurt, they hurt the brand, regardless of what your brand is. It's brand damage. It's really difficult to quantify, but it's something that has to be taken into account. So my experience has been, I pretty much get, and we're reasonable in our asks, but we have been adding more and more tools, more capabilities, more monitoring, more resources than we've ever had before. So each year, it's almost an exponential growth in our landscape, our security landscape versus linear, right? Because you almost have to be, because the bad guys are exponential. So you have to be as well. And then the other thing that I think many of us understand now is that, phishing attacks, 85% of phishing attacks are an employee clicking on a wrong link. So it is education of your employees is a critical capability. So it's not only having the right tools and capabilities, but it's also making sure your employees and folks that have access to your systems understand that they have to be responsible as well.
Well, thanks, Frank. I know we had 4 minutes, but I think we're about to drop off. Real quick to end this, we got a minute left. Yeah. We're good on time?
So we've got 4 minutes left, but we have some questions from the audience, which is why I was kind of signaling in your
Apparently I wasn't paying attention because you got my attention, but yeah, go ahead.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. So one of the questions is from Sean Ring, and he says that a lot of the panels so far have, so this is a bit broader than legacy technologies, but a lot of the panels so far have talked a lot about employees retention, and onboarding. And he asks about whether the panelists could share their thoughts on the kind of invisibility of the non-employee workforce, i.e. freelancers and independent workers.
Great question.
And I haven't fact-checked this, but I trust Sean to get this right. But he reckons there's about 50 million of these people in the U.S. workforce.
The gig economy is is going to be 2/3 in the U.S. And I think that's what I think that's.
I think that's what he's getting at,
what
exactly.
he's getting at.
And so I'd love to hear thoughts about that from panelists, and I guess the extent to which these kind of workers can kind of be kept on board as technology advances in organizations. Can be kept up to speed, I guess.
It was Sean, right?
So that was Sean's question, yes.
Yeah. So Sean, great question. Let me see if I can make it even. Let me add it to it. What are you doing for the gig economy? For the gig economy worker, what kind of benefits have changed in the future? What do you think will change in the future? Not to put any of your companies on the spot, but just more, what do you see? Is that fair? Did I get that question right? Yeah, I got a thumbs up. Nicole, I know you're not looking at me, but I'm looking at you.
Sorry. Perfect. For us, we literally had to create a whole group in our people and capability team to focus on that because we understand the rise of the gig economy of worker. And looking at the engagement, the intellectual capital and property that they have and that they share based on their respective roles.
Because that's an issue. That could become an issue.
That can become an issue, and that's something that we had to put a greater focus on that because we rely heavily on that sort of gig worker. Even as much so, how do you relook at now from a benefits perspective? What do you apply for them? So now it's literally looking at that that particular worker completely different than we have in the past.
If I was taking notes, I'd be putting a star right there. Future, how do you address that in the future?
Yeah.
Frank, you've got some?
Yeah, no, for us, I'll be really quick. Basically, we do like a 70-30 split. So my dev team is 70% outsourced through third parties, and then 30% are insourced. And we do like that model. And then the way we try to attract and retain them, two things. When we're going to hire someone, when we have an open position at RBI, we look to those workers first, right? So we always structure our contracts with third parties such that we have the right to hire after X number of months of employment with us. So generally, our first look is to pull in a contractor or someone who's been working with us to move them over. And then I don't have team meetings like we do monthly all hands. We invite everyone, right? So it's the employees and the contractors all together. We don't really treat them differently. Of course, the benefits are different, but in terms of how we treat them and the information they get, it's very consistent across the two different groups.
So for us, Ryan, without technology, there is no gig economy, right? Like if you don't have very high-speed wireless connectivity, you didn't have real-time location services, and you didn't have the ability to do mobile payments, you wouldn't have a company like Uber or Uber Eats or any of those other things. So for this demographic shift that we are seeing change in the United States, and by the way, it's true for Europe, Japan, even China, for a large portion of the world, we have to change our mindset to let's create more jobs, from let's create more jobs to let's increase productivity per worker, because that's the only way for the world to grow. Otherwise, the GDP growth that we observed from 2000 to 2019 is expected to shrink, is expected to reduce even after we recover from the downturn in 2023. The only way for us to continue to go back to that growth path is to be able to increase productivity per worker, is to be able to enable them with these tech tools to work smarter, better, more efficiently, and with higher security.
So I know we're out of time.
Yes.
And I'm going to do 30 seconds. All right, putting pressure. Ryan's lightning round. Frank, you go first. Creative, one word, one sentence. Nicole, you go last since you've been going first the whole time. Creative destruction is blank. Creative destruction is blank. That I know it's hard. I'm sorry.
I would say is fun. Like, I mean, yeah, it's fun,
good.
right?
By the way, they're laughing with you now, so you're good. You're the star on this one. Kirti, you.
Digitization, automation.
Creative. All right, Nicole, bring us home.
It's not going anywhere. It's here to stay.
Repeat that again. The mic was off.
Not going anywhere. It's here to stay.
Well,
way of thinking.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Big
you.
hand of applause for these leaders. Thank you. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.